On this edition of Early Look, I'm going to be previewing the lightweight title fight headlining UFC 302 between champion Islam Makhachev and Dustin Poirier. And if you've never watched the show before, I'm going to go through a bunch of different stats, a bunch of different intangibles, and then I'm going to give you my prediction and pick at the end. Some of this stuff may have relevance, it may not. I'll let you decide that in the comments. Would love to hear your prediction at the end of this. I don't just want your pick. I want to hear how you think this fight plays out on June 1st. My name is James Lynch. Let's get into it, and we'll do a quick tail of the tape like we usually do when we start this show. You can see 25-1 there for Islam. Dustin Poirier, 30-8, 32 years old to 35, 5'10" to 5'9", 70.5 inch reach to 73. So Poirier gonna have the reach advantage. Islam a little bit taller, and Poirier a little bit older. Let's start first with the champion though, Islam Makhachev. 25-1 record, considered the pound-for-pound best fighter in MMA right now. Let's take a look at some of his accolades. So I mentioned there, 25-1, he's the current lightweight champion, 5'10" with a 70.5 inch reach. So he'll have just a 1 inch height advantage, and he's 3 years younger than Dustin Poirier. He had 2 successful title defenses at lightweight already. He's got fight of the night 2 times against Arman Tsarukyan and Alexander Volkanovski. He's got performance of the night 2 times against Charles Oliveira and Alex Volkanovski as well. He's tied with Matt Serra for fewest significant strikes absorbed per minute in UFC lightweight division history. He's got a bunch of other accolades as well. I'm not going to go through all of them, but he's got the 3rd highest takedown accuracy percentage in UFC lightweight division history. He's also got the 2nd highest takedown defense percentage in UFC lightweight division history. Islam made his amateur debut. Actually, he didn't have an amateur debut. He went straight to the pros way back. It says amateur here, but if you look at the dates actually later than what we have here, so Tapology not having that right, but his pro debut took place in August of 2010, made his UFC debut in May of 2015, and is 14-1 in the octagon. He's got 8 stoppage victories. Some notable wins include along the way Chris Wade, who was 12-1 at the time. That was a good win. Of course, Wade going on to PFL after that. Nick Lentz was a vet, had a lot more fights than him, took care of business there, got a decision victory there. Of course, Arman Tsarukyan, that was a short notice fight for both, but again, that's a win that has aged very well for Islam. Davey Ramos was 10-2 at the time. That was a very good win for him as well. You've also got Drew Dober, who I believe I don't know if he was ranked when Islam fought him then, but he has been ranked at one point. That's a notable win. Same thing with Thiago Moises. Dan Hooker, obviously we know him. Bobby Green, Charles Oliveira, still one of his biggest wins. I mean, you could debate it either way, but Oliveira, Volkanovski, 2 wins over Volkanovski, very impressive, especially his last fight, finishing Volkanovski. First fighter to finish Alexander Volkanovski in the UFC. That's quite the feat, and very, very impressive. Also has the first loss on Alexander Volkanovski's UFC record. I know Volkanovski lost outside the UFC, but still a very good feat from Islam to get that victory as well. So a lot of notable wins, and Islam's just got one loss, a loss to Adriano Martins back in October of 2015, but that was ages ago. Islam, for the most part, has been pretty active throughout his career. I mean, especially early on, you see number of fights throughout the year, two fights, 3 fights a year. He's had some layoffs since then, though. If we go to the Adriano Martins to Chris Wade fight, there was a 350-day layoff there. Going from Chris Wade to Nick Lentz, there was a 343-day layoff. Going from Cajun Johnson to Arman Tsarukyan, there was a 266-day layoff. And then going from the first Volk fight to the second Volk fight, there was a 252-day layoff. Only 224 days from the Volkanovski fight in October to this fight. That's one of the shortest spans in his career. Good to see Islam back in action in the early portion of 2024. Let's go look at Islam's had one close fight in his career. I was just going to get to something else, but I forgot about the Volkanovski fight. It was close, but if you look at the media scorecards, and myself watching that fight, I thought Islam won, but that was back at UFC 284 back in February of 2023. 23 media members scoring the fight for Islam, just 6 scoring it for Volkanovski. So I know people point to that being close, but majority of people felt like Islam won that. As far as his stats, very impressive here for Islam. Significant strikes landed per minute, 2.46. The striking accuracy is at 60%. His hands have actually come a long way. It's one of the reasons he was able to beat Oliveira, knocking him down and getting the submission win. His striking defense is at 61%, so he doesn't get hit a lot. Takedown average 3.17. I'm sure we'll see some of those in this fight. He's got a 60% takedown accuracy. He's got a 90% takedown defense. Don't think we'll be seeing many takedowns in this fight from Dustin Poirier on Islam, because Islam, like I said, 90% takedown defense, very impressive. So that's pretty much everything you need to know about Islam. Again, one of the greats in the sport right now, and got an interesting fight here against Dustin Poirier. Let's talk about the diamond, though. Dustin Poirier, the former UFC interim lightweight champion, was an interim champ at one point. Let's get to everything there. Poirier, you can see there 30-8. He's got 15 knockouts, 8 submissions, and 7 decisions in his career. He is 35 years old. He's 5'9" with a 73-inch reach, so he'll have a 2.5-inch reach advantage in this fight. He's a BJJ black belt under Tim Crater, trains out of American Top Team, and is currently ranked number 4 in the lightweight division. He's got fight of the night 9 times. You don't need to go through all the names, but obviously that's impressive in itself. He's got submission of the night 1 time versus Max Holloway. He's got performance of the night 4 times against Carlos Diego Ferreira, Yancy Medeiros, Eddie Alvarez. He's also tied with Nate Diaz, Edson Barbosa, and Frankie Edgar for most fight night bonuses in UFC history. And he's got a lot of other accolades. I mean, this is a veteran who's been in the UFC since, well, we'll get to when he made his debut, but it's been a long time. Poirier made his amateur debut in December of 2007, made his MMA debut in May of 2009, only had a few fights, on the regional scene, and then went straight to the WEC, actually lost to Danny Castillo, and then made his UFC debut just 3 fights after that in January of 2011. So Poirier's been in the UFC for quite some time. He's also fought in multiple weight classes. One thing we got to do mention when it comes to Dustin Poirier is he's fought 10 times at featherweight, he's had 2 catchweight fights, and he's fought 27 times at lightweight. He's got a lot of notable wins in his career. Let's start first with the Josh Grisby win way back when in his UFC debut. Grisby was 14-1 at the time. That was very much a big win. He's got 2 wins over Max Holloway as well. 1 at featherweight and then 1 at lightweight, which was in 2019. He's still the only fighter to finish Max Holloway in his career. So again, very, very, very impressive there. I submitted him. Has wins over Bobby Green, Jim Miller, Anthony Pettis, Justin Gaethje, Eddie Alvarez, Dan Hooker, and 2 wins over Conor McGregor. He's also got wins over Michael Chandler and most recently Benoit Saint Denis. He's also had some layoffs in his career, much like Islam. Going from Alvarez to Holloway, there was a 259-day layoff. Going from Khabib to Dan Hooker, there was a 294-day layoff. The biggest layoff he had, though, going from Oliveira to Chandler, there was a 336-day layoff. Only 84 days separate the Benoit Saint Denis fight and this fight. So one of the shorter turnarounds for Poirier in his career. But if you got a title shot, you got to take it. Obviously, very, very, very big fight there. Poirier's only had 1 really close fight, and that was years ago, a fight that wasn't even really that relevant, UFC 131 against Jason Young. If you go look at the media scorecards there, they were split. Some people felt like Jason Young deserved the nod on that scorecard. Let's look at Dustin Poirier's stats. Again, very impressive. Has a higher significant strikes landed per minute at 5.45. Now, part of that could also be just with the fact that Poirier's fought a lot more than Islam in the UFC and, is primarily a striker more so than Islam is. So 5.45, that's very impressive there. Striking accuracy, though, only 51%. Islam's at 60, if you remember. His strike defense is at 53%, so that's a lot lower than Islam. His takedown average is at 1.33, and his takedown accuracy only 36%. So don't think he'll get a takedown in Islam, but his takedown defense is at 63%. We'll see if Islam is able to take him down. Let's go have a look at the odds right now. You can see most books having Islam minus 500 around there, getting close to minus 600. Totally understandable because no one has, other than Volk in that first fight, no one's really come close to defeating Islam other than obviously the Adriano Martins fight. But I think 9 times out of 10, Islam probably wins that fight. And over on Tapology, we always look at the fan voting as far as how people are going on that one. You can see there 84% of people picking Islam Makhachev, Dustin Poirier, just 16% of people thinking he's going to get it done. So which way am I going to go in this one? Despite what might be out there on the internet, I am going with Islam Makhachev to win this fight. I'm going to take him by 3rd round submission, and here is why I like him in this spot. So first and foremost, let's just talk about the optics of this fight. Dustin Poirier, under normal circumstances, is not getting this title shot. UFC, I've talked about this before, but we'll give the Coles notes. UFC needed a big fight on UFC 300. They put together Justin Gaethje and Max Holloway, despite the fact that Justin Gaethje had knocked out Dustin Poirier just 2 fights ago. He absolutely earned a title shot off that, but the UFC had other plans. They wanted him to fight for the BMF belt, and sure enough, Gaethje loses that fight, and so Poirier gets the shot instead. So he gets, and again, Poirier deserves it in the sense of he just beat Benoit Saint Denis. There's no one available to fight Islam right now, including Arman Saryukin, who turned down to fight on June 1st. So Dustin's getting it just based off good timing and coming off a big win over Benoit Saint Denis. So that's sort of something to keep in mind, that under normal circumstances, Poirier is not getting this title shot. But why do I say submission for Islam? Well, 44% of Islam's wins are by submission. That's the most by far as method of victory in his career. If you look at how he normally wins, 44% by submission, so that leads more to that. On the flip side, Dustin Poirier has been knocked out 3 times. He's been submitted 3 times. He's only been knocked out 1 time against Gaethje. You have to go all the way back to 2016, the last time he was knocked out before that. I think for the most part, Dustin's got a pretty decent chin. You look at fighting Conor McGregor, Chandler, Dan Hooker, all these guys have knockout power, weren't able to knock him out. So Eddie Alvarez, same thing, right? Like Poirier's got a decent chin. I think it's more likely you go for the submission because, again, Poirier and also Islam, just with his, the fact that he's going to want to grapple in this fight, more likely you'll think I would see a submission win here as well. The other thing we got to talk about with Poirier is he's taken a ton of damage in his career. Islam has not. He hasn't really been in any wars. Poirier has. I mean, we could count all the fights that he's had. That stuff adds up, not to mention the fact that Poirier's a little bit older in this fight. We also saw, and granted, this is a couple of years removed, but we saw a similar style matchup against Khabib and Nurmagomedov back in 2019. Now, look, Poirier has definitely improved since then, and Khabib and Islam aren't the same fighter, but we did see him get finished in the third round. That's my prediction here. Third round submission victory. I could see the same thing happening here with Poirier as well. And the other thing we got to point out with Poirier, too, is if you watch that fight at UFC 299, if you just didn't watch the fight and you saw the result, you'd be like, oh, great win there for Poirier. But let's be honest, he lost that first round against Benoit Saint-Denis. Benoit Saint-Denis was close to finishing Dustin Poirier. Now, Benoit Saint-Denis, not on the level of Islam by any means. I mean, Islam's far ahead. He's the current champ, but that's a little bit concerning for Poirier. Like, if Poirier had gone out there and beat the brakes off Benoit Saint-Denis and then finished him in the second round, I think you could argue the odds should be closer. But the fact that he struggled against Saint-Denis and then got the finish, it's not exactly encouraging for him to think that he'll do something different in this spot against Islam and get away with it. I mean, look, Saint-Denis, there was, he got fatigued in the fight. That's not the reason he lost, but it did contribute to it. Islam's not going to be tired at any point in the fight, and Islam's a guy that's going to be in your face. He's tough to stop the takedown. It's a much different, much scarier matchup there for Poirier as well. The only thing I'll say for Poirier, and again, anything can happen in a fight. Like, I think Dustin has the ability to win this fight. He's got knockout power. We've seen Islam get knocked out before. We could see Poirier maybe catch him or something like that, but I really think that's his only chance to win this fight. The other thing is, it's always dangerous when a fighter has nothing to lose. I think, this is just my opinion, I think Poirier loses this, he's done. There's no real reason for him to stick around at this point. He's had a couple title shots. If he fails this fight, it's over. But that could also mean at the same time, he's got nothing to lose here. A lot of people are counting him out. We saw the odds here. Again, Islam a huge favorite here. That's dangerous for a guy like Poirier. What if he just runs out there and tries to take Islam's head off and he isn't expecting it? It could happen. So that is one thing to just make note of in this fight. I'm not saying Poirier's going to win by any means, but I do think there's that ability of, people are counting me out. Like this happened in the Saint-Denis fight, right? And that was a dangerous fight. And a lot of people were like, man, like Poirier's going to lose that. And it looked that way after that first round, but he was able to come back and persevere. There is something to be said about overcoming adversity. And there's also something to be said for a guy who's got nothing to lose in this fight as well. And again, Poirier's got to feel a little confident as well, too. Beating Saint-Denis, who's a very dangerous opponent as well, albeit not on the level of Islam, but that's another thing to kind of look at with the Poirier fight as well. So again, I don't think Poirier is going to win this. Could he? Yes. I think every fighter, for the most part, has an ability to win a fight here, but there's just too many things that are in Islam's favor. He's got the better wrestling. He's got the better ground game. He's tough to finish himself. I mean, we've seen him fight guys that have knockout power as well. And not to mention, finishing Volkanovski. I know people say, oh, he's a featherweight. Doesn't matter. Volkanovski would do quite well against a lot of these lightweight guys. The other thing you got to look at, too, is the fact that, that Charles fight, like he dominated Charles. Dominated him bell to bell. And I know Charles has his own flaws here, but Charles also has a win over Poirier not that long ago. When was that fight? That was a couple years ago. That was 2021. Okay, maybe a few years back, but still, again, I think just the smart money here is on Islam. I think he gets it done in the third round by submission. That was what I'm going with for my official pick on this fight. So I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. What is your prediction? I don't just want to hear a pick. Who do you think wins this? What is your prediction on this fight? I guess the better question is, who here is picking Dustin Poirier? And if you are picking him, how do you think he wins this fight? I would like to hear that because I think it's going to be kind of like the Tapology poll as we saw there. I think majority of people are going to be picking Islam in this spot as they should. He should be favored. He should win this fight, but I always want to hear for the people who are going against the grain because I want to give you full credit if something crazy happens and he does pull this off. But like I said, I think Islam wins this. Then he fights Arman later this year and then everyone's happy. So follow me on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram at Lynch on Sports. Make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button on this video. It would really mean a lot. I'm James Lynch. Thanks so much for watching and I'll see you next time.